Nightwork, a Dave Brandstetter mystery. Author Joseph Hansen. Publisher Open Road Integrated Media. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 16. Cecil slept, slumped across the back seat, hands open in his lap, Cameron's case in his hands. Melville slept in the passenger seat, head over against the window, rolling against the glass with the movement of the car. The glass was wet. Rain had begun falling again about the time they reached Horseshoe Canyon. It was 5 o'clock, but still dark. Dave ached from all the driving. He swung the Valiant gratefully down into the brickyard and stepped on the brakes. The headlights shone on a patrol car, black and white, "Protect and serve" on the door. The uniformed officers climbed out of the car, shining flashlights. One stood back, hand on the butt of a big revolver on his hip. The other came forward cautiously. He was young, blond, and looked sleepy. "See some identification, please." "I live here." Dave dug the leather folder from his inside jacket pocket, flapped it open, held it out where the officer could shine a light on it. Plastic covered his badged cap. Rain beaded on his leather jacket. He squinted at Dave's private investigator's license. Dave said, "This is my house. What's the trouble?" "You can put that away, thanks." The officer bent and shone his light inside on Cecil, on Melville. "Who are they?" He swung the light so it shone in Dave's eyes. "Are you all right? What's the situation here?" "You mean," Dave said, "they're black, and I'm white. They're young, and I'm old. So something must automatically be wrong." He pushed the door handle and moved to get out. The officer didn't step back. Dave jerked his head to indicate Cecil. "And he is surrounded by rich men's toys?" "This car is no rich man's toy." The flashlight played over the dented thin gauge steel. "Guess I'm a little confused." Cecil stirred, lifted his arms to stretch, stopped, and sat up straight. "What's going on?" Just keep your seat, please," the officer said. "The car is a cover," Dave said, "for stakeouts. That young man is Cecil Harris, my associate. He lives here. This is Melville Bishop. I'm looking into the death of his father. He's helping me. He's my house guest." Melville opened his eyes. "Mm-hmm," he said. Dave asked the officer, "What are you doing here?" "Mrs. Brandstetter called us. A prowler with a gun. Tried to make her let him in. When she refused, he sat out here in his car." The young man smiled slightly. "Rich man's toy. A new Mercedes. By the time we got here, he was gone. Smithers. You know a Smithers?" "Nobody knows Smithers." Dave pushed the door a little further open. "Not by that name. Excuse me. I'd like to get out of the car now." The officer took 2 steps back, over beside the black and white, where a radio dispatcher's voice crackled quietly. The other officer kept his hand on his gun. Dave got out into the gentle rain. "Smithers is involved somehow in a case I'm working on for Pinnacle Life, and that's all I know." "Your wife," the officer said, "seems to think he came to kill you." "Is she all right?" Dave said. Melville leaned across the seat. "What about the babies?" She's worried for you," the officer said. He frowned at Melville. "She didn't mention any babies." Melville scrambled out of the car. The officer by the patrol car drew his gun. "My little brothers," Melville said, turned and took steps across the wet bricks. "Hold it right there," the officer with the gun said, and Amanda came through the headlight beam, small and trim, cinching the belt of a red raincoat. Her dark eyes were wide with worry. "Thank God you're back," she said, and put her arms around Dave and laid her neat head against his chest for a moment. She looked up into his face. She was pale. "Are you all right?" "Fine," he said. "I'm worried about you." "I'm unscathed," she said. "Just scared witless." "What about my brothers?" Melville said. "Asleep." Amanda gave him a weary smile. "And if they sleep as hard as they play Donkey Kong, they'll stay asleep for a while." "You're right about that." Melville laughed relief. You know Bishop here. The officer asked Amanda. Harris in the car there? Yes, they're friends. Amanda nodded. And this is your husband. Amanda blinked at Dave, mischief in her eyes. She was about to complicate things. Dave wanted to sleep. He shook his head at her pleadingly. She sighed, looked at the officer, and said, Yes, of course. Thank you for staying. I'll be all right now. You're welcome. The officer touched his cap. He looked at Dave. 2 other patrol cars searched the area. No sign of Smithers. We ought to locate him. 40 to 50 years of age. Tall, 6'3" or 4. Slender, 165 pounds. Bald, Dave said. He was wearing a hat, Amanda said. The officer asked Dave, Sure you can't help us? If I learn anything, Dave said, I'll call you. Tapping woke Dave, the sharp rap of a finger ring against glass, one of the square panes of the door from the courtyard into the front building. He didn't make a lot of use of the front building, though Amanda had made it handsome. He entertained in it. It had the best sound system, so he sometimes did his listening here. Otherwise, he rarely entered the place. But last night, Amanda had put the little bishops in the bed on the loft in the back building. The only bed in the place, so Melville had slept on the one couch in the back building, and Dave and Cecil had slept on couches up here. Daylight, gray and rainy, but daylight, came into the big raftered place through clerestory windows, above a curtained row of French doors. Dave turned on the couch, stiff, aching, fumbled on the floor for his watch, and squinted groggily at the time. Not yet 10 o'clock. Clutching the blanket around him, he sat up and peered. A big-shouldered man was doing the wrapping. Not a tall, thin man. Dave shrugged off the blanket and, shivering in briefs and t-shirt, kicked into trousers and pushed as creakily as old Reverend Prentice up off the couch. He crossed deep carpet, climbed a level, unchained and unbolted the door, opened the door to cold dampness. Ken? He said. What is this? I'm sorry to wake you. Rain dripped from the crumpled canvas hat of Captain Ken Barker, Homicide Division, LAPD. He had a broken nose, and eyes the same dark gray as the clouds that hung low over the canyon this morning. But I understand a man came by last night to murder you. It awakened my protective instincts. Come in, Dave said. He rubbed his forehead. There was an ache there. Barker stepped in, dripping, and Dave shut the door. It closed with a stutter against the sill. The rains had swollen it. Let me take your coat and hat. Amanda had stationed a coat rack by the door. Dave hung Barker's Mac on it, hat stuffed in the pocket. I didn't get to bed until 6. Dave moved down into the room. What else did you hear? West Side went to work on Smithers. And Barker followed, lighting a cigarette. Watching Dave, who sat on the couch again, picked up socks, found them damp and muddy, didn't put them on. Barker said, No Smither owns any Mercedes. Not in California. Why didn't your lady get the license number? With slow, mindless motions, Dave folded the blanket. Because when it rains too much, the landscape lights in front short out. I keep forgetting to get them fixed. From down the room came Cecil's voice. Oh, man, do you know what time it is? His head appeared above the back of the couch. He looked as cranky as he sounded. We just got to sleep. Why do you want to start so early? He saw Barker. Oh, I'm sorry? Who are you? Barker said. You got older, Dave said, and they made you a captain and gave you more help. I got older, but I had to round up my own help. Cecil came from the couch, yawning, shuffling, wrapped in his blanket. Dave introduced them. They shook hands. Cecil's blanket slipped off his shoulders. The scars showed on his ribcage. Barker recognized them for what they were and frowned. Where'd you get those? He said. Cecil pulled up the blanket. Line of duty, he said. You going to find Smithers? He never registered that gun, Barker said. It's not his real name, Dave said. The case we're working on is full of phony names. Individuals, companies. A coffee maker was behind the bar. He loaded it and set it to the work. And then he started the signal going on an intercom he had never used. Barker blinked. We need dry clothes, Dave explained. Out in the rain all night, Cecil said. What kind of case? Barker said. Dave told him about the Myers case, omitting the parts involving Ossie Bishop and family. Smithers appeared after the newscast about the bomb. He didn't realize I'd already been to see Angela Myers, and he tried to pass himself off as an investigator for Pinnacle Life. The beeper stopped. Melville's voice came from the intercom. Courtney was asleep. I'm sorry, I couldn't find it. Looked high and low. How come you hide it? Dave remembered only now that he had cleared the intercom in the back building off the desk as superfluous weeks ago and stowed it on a bookshelf. Woke the babies up too. They've had their sleep, Dave said. That's just the trouble. The voices of the little boys were shrill in the background. I got cartoons on up there. Here's your bed for a trampoline. We'll feed them, Dave said. Just as soon as you bring over dry clothes for Cecil and me. I didn't hear the phone ring, Melville said. So there ain't no news about Mama? And Dave read his watch again. Amanda should be at the hospital by now, unless the traffic was bad. She'll be calling soon. Hope so. Those babies going to miss Mama pretty quick now. They all start crying together. You ain't ever heard nothing like it. Melville sighed. All right, I'll bring you clothes. The intercom went silent. Dave felt bugs under the bar. He said to Barker, Mrs. Myers was at work. He peered into the mugs, dusty. He rinsed them at the little bar sink. But her brother was at home, all muscle and gut. Bright enough to guess Smithers was lying, but dumb enough to show off how smart he was by flashing my card. And letting Smithers walk off with it, Cecil said. Pinnacle never heard of him, Barker said. You should be a detective. Dave dried the mugs with a starchy little towel and set them on the bar. They look good, hand-thrown with a drizzly brown glaze. Expensive, of course. Amanda had chosen them. We'll have some coffee here shortly. Good. Barker leaned on the bar. Is your lady sure he came to kill you, or did she jump at that when she saw this gun? Let me tell you how it went. Dave took the cigarette pack from the breast pocket of Barker's whipcord jacket. I've got a client staying here. Lighting a cigarette, Dave nodded at the intercom. The boy whose voice you just heard, also his 3 little brothers. Name of Bishop? Barker said, taking back his cigarette pack, tucking it away. I read the report. And then you know Amanda was babysitting while Cecil and I took Melville with us on this stakeout. I want to hear about the stakeout next. Dave shook his head. No, you don't. It's not your worry. It connects to the Myers matter, and that's county, not city. I promised to lay it on Jamie Salazar's desk. I'm going to do that this morning for what it's worth. Smithers came here. Barker studded out his cigarette in a brown pottery ashtray on the bar. This is city. Amanda had tucked the kids in. Dave tilted his head. You've been here. You know the layout. Barker nodded. Loft in the rear building. And she thought she'd like to relax with television, Dave said. And she didn't want the kids to wake up again, so she turned down the lamps back there, put on her raincoat, and started for this building. And she saw a guy skulking around with a revolver, Barker said. And she was closer to this building by then, so she ran for it. And he saw her, Cecil said, and chased her. He didn't shoot at her, Barker said. It was me he wanted to shoot. Dave took the pot and filled the mugs. Amanda and I don't look alike, not even in the dark. He set the pot back in place. She locked and bolted the door there. Barker's somber eyes measured the door, unhappy at all those glass panes, thick though they were, and even though the old wood that clinched them was heavy and strong. And she very sensibly did not turn on the lights. Dave slid one of the mugs at him. She started for the phone over there to summon your people. But he banged on the door. Cecil came to the bar, still wrapped in his blanket, and gave his name, if that is his name. He was tall enough to bend far over the bar and peer beneath it. Sugar? He asked Dave. Cream? From the little refrigerator, Dave brought a brown pottery sugar bowl, a cold spoon leaning in it. Afraid you'll have to rough it. He showed Cecil a blue pint carton. This cream is dated 2 months ago. Making a face, Cecil spooned sugar into his coffee. Barker said to Dave, So, he yelled through the door that he had to see you. It was urgent. He knew you were here because your car was here. He meant the van out there with the flame painted on it. Barker gave the semblance of a laugh. He doesn't know you very well. It's Cecil's van. Dave tried his coffee, and it made him feel better right away. I drive a brown Jaguar these days. It's in the repair shop for the moment. She insisted you weren't here and told him to go away, and he went away, Barker said, but only out to his car to wait for you to show up. That's what bothers me. He had to know she'd call the police. He wasn't here when they got here, Cecil said. Barker nodded, frowned, and worked on his coffee. But it's as if he meant to be at first, then changed his mind. That's puzzling. With a thick finger, Barker dug out his cigarettes again. Extended the pack to Dave, to Cecil. Dave's cigarette still burned. Cecil wanly shook his head. Barker's lighter was an old Zippo, embellished with a small police badge and worn gold and silver. He lit a cigarette and put pack and lighter away. He lifted his coffee mug and frowned at Dave over it. Has it occurred to you that Smithers might be an investigator, federal, state, even county? The grand jury's investigated the illegal dumping of toxic waste. If the grand jury wants me, Dave said, sending a prowler with a gun in the middle of the night seems an odd way to go about it. And that isn't all, Cecil said. That same man, Dave reached to clap a hand over Cecil's mouth. When the door opened and Melville came in with an armload of clothes wrapped in dry cleaning shop plastic. I didn't know what you needed, so I brought everything I could think of. Melville looked around the big, comfortable, multi-level room. Where should I put them? Thank you, Dave said. On that couch is fine. Barker turned to watch Melville carry the clothes to the couch and lay them down. Behind Barker's muscular back, Dave frowned at Cecil and put a finger to his lips. Cecil showed bewilderment, but he gave a shrug of acceptance. The blanket slipped off his shoulders again. He pulled it up. This plastic wet, Melville said, and began to unwrap the clothes. Listen, those babies want breakfast. Be all right with you if I was to... The telephone rang. It sat on the table at the end of the couch. Melville didn't wait for Dave. He stepped to the phone and picked it up. He started to say, Hutchings, but caught himself and said, Bannister residence. Instead, then he listened. It was quiet in the room. The rain pattered on the roof, splashed on the bricks outside, pinged on the parked cars. Melville's face lit up. He put a hand over the mouthpiece and said, She all right? My mama gonna be all right, he said into the phone. Mama, how you doing? No, they fine. We all fine. Mr. Bannister looking after us. I'll thank him. I want to see you too, soon as it's safe. Won't be too long now. You take it easy. Hear me? I'll be calling you. He put the phone into Dave's hand. Amanda, Dave said. She saw the man who shot her, Amanda said. He stepped from behind the store. It was Smithers. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.